All right, welcome back. We are COMP229, that's Web Application Development in the summer 2022 semester at Centennial, and it's week 9 of our broadcast and time together, and welcome back. And welcome back from Cyberpocalypse, or whatever you want to call it, Robopocalypse, the crazy stuff that happened on Friday, which definitely happened to me. So I'm not sure if you guys were affected by it, but by the Rogers outage, but it affected me. I was down all day Friday, like probably like some of you, and I was also up and down on Saturday and Sunday, which is an awesome, thing for a provider, a service provider, a national service provider to, for the services they provide anyway. So that's how what happened to me. I'm not sure if any of you got affected. Did you guys get affected by the Rogers outage? Some of you may have. Anyways, as a result of that, Boopendeer says you got affected. Yeah, as a result of that, I was down again off of Discord. I couldn't respond. Some people had sent me messages and so on. I saw them sometimes, and then I tried to respond to them. I couldn't. So I had a class on Friday. I had to cancel because of this and a bunch of other stuff. So that was what happened. And so we're going to get back on track this week with some of the things I planned to do on the weekend for you guys, but I didn't have a chance to do it because I was mostly down. So good morning, Rajan. All right, so what are we doing this week? So last week we did some team forming. I talked about the project at length. There was also the recordings online. And, again, we're sitting at, from a project component perspective, week 9 is when everything is coming to a head for you guys this week, because this week is all about getting your first release done by Sunday, which is a tall order to get you guys going. So that's where we're sitting. We're sitting at week 9. And a couple of things that are due that are going to happen this week from a project component perspective is, again, project part 2, first release, that's due Sunday at midnight, as well as your weekly report and your peer review, which I talked about. So these are 2 individual components that are part of your first release. Okay, so that's kind of happening, project part 2. I haven't looked at your project part 1, which is your contract, but I'm going to talk about that with you guys today. Hopefully we can get some of that straightened out for some of you. It could mean a few shiftings of the group and so on. From a tech perspective, online, I'm talking about Angular, but live today, we're going to try and get a couple of these things started. Converting your Express server, right, is what this is, to an API. And, so that's kind of required if you're going to use an optional front end. And I'll talk about that in a bit with you guys and see what your plans are. So that is what we're doing today. And for the people that are here, my question first and foremost, which is the top of the slide here, is what project have you chosen, and any problems with team forming? So anyone, I know that some people chose the survey site. I saw some notes over the weekend as well, here and there, but I just wanted to ask you guys again. So for you guys, what is your main site that you're making for this semester, this project that you're doing? I think, Elias, I saw your project was a survey, if I'm not wrong, right? Okay, good. So your group chose a survey too. Okay, good. That's good. Thank you. So I recommended it, and the reason why I recommended the survey site was challenges, right? It's like a lot of work for you guys, and my thoughts are, let's keep it simple. There's a lot to learn just from doing the survey site, okay? A huge amount. And sure, there's other things you could do to make your life more challenging, but I think there's still lots to learn with what I've given you. Question 2 is, what front end have you chosen? So let's go back to the guys that answered. So Elias, you said you're doing a survey site. What's your front end? Well, Rajan says tournament. That's awesome, Rajan. That's pretty cool too. So let's talk about with the people that are here for Solace. So, oh, you're going to do a React. Okay, interesting. And what about Sarah and Rojan is doing Mern too? Okay, excellent. That's interesting. So the reason why I'm asking that is because a Mern site requires an Express API, right? So that's what we need to do next. And I know I talked about it up online. So again, if you looked up online, let's go here. Yes, I'm going to start showing that now with you guys. But first, we have some requirements. So if you look up online, in week 9's tech, that's been recorded for you, pre-recorded from last time. So there are some Angular components here for sure. But if you scroll down, there is a section here. Again, for those people who are using JavaScript, not TypeScript. That's about 2 hours, and how to migrate your Express server to an API. We're going to do part of that today, and then we'll start hopefully your React as well. So that is where you can start off. Without this piece, which is pure JavaScript, again, you'd have to convert this to TypeScript. Without this piece, you could not have a front end properly. And the reason for that is because if you're planning to do a React front end, because you need some kind of back end that is going to serve up JSON data as opposed to have a kind of an Express view engine. So that's where I want to start today. But first, before we get there, what I want to do is I want to talk about groups and all those kind of things. Are there any group issues before we begin? So I'm talking about things that groups that need to be moved, people that need to be removed from a group, those kind of things. I know some people had some issues. Again, I couldn't respond 100%. I was up and down yesterday. So if there's anyone who has issues with a group, please send me a DM, and then I'll switch you out right now because I'd like to do that first. And Rajan says you're all set. That's good. That's excellent. Here's something I wanted to ask you guys, since some of you seem to be all set. How were your first meetings? How did you feel about that? And again, you can come on the mic to talk about that because I wanted to talk about your first meetings and so on before we begin the tech stuff, because it's been just a few minutes. And the other thing you can also, what I'd ask is your roles. Who's the PM, who's the project manager, and that kind of stuff. So Bhupinder, I think you were going to talk. Go ahead.
Professor, the first meeting went very nice. We talked about the possibilities of everything, every case that, for example, um, the timetable that which how can we start and how can we finish on time,
Yeah.
and the responsibilities of each member. Like we divided it to the person that's, for example, I'm great. For example, only I'm great at designing. Like they gave me the task which I'm best at, so I can like explore more
Right.
and dig down the more knowledge and collect knowledge and then use it in the project. Same as for example Elias, Ricardo, and Silvana. We did the same. Paul. We did the same thing with them as well.
Excellent. Okay, good. So that's good. So it sounds like you guys are good to go. So you're the web designer, is what I'm thinking. That's good. And what about so I get so I'm just asking. So from a group perspective, let's talk about that first. What group are you part of right now? I just wanted to take a look.
I am at in group number 6, I guess.
6. Let's take a look here. The reason why I'm asking is I can, like I promised you I was going to do, I was going to change up the group numbers to make them your names. So if I look at the participants, this is your group. Are you guys, this is group
No, no,
6?
no, Professor. I think it's three. Yeah. Sorry, Professor.
It's okay. I don't mind. So this is group 3. Okay, there's Elias, Upinder, I see Paul, Pardo, Silvana, and Johan. Okay, so from this group, what is your? Do you want me to change your group name? I think I got some messages from you guys to change your group name to something else. What is the group name? Can you put it in the chat for me? Because what I want to do is I want to change up that name. So here's group 3. So instead of you being called group 3, you'll be called your name. What is it again, guys? Mantis developers. Okay, good. All right. Let's do that. So that'll be your group name. So then when I come up, I'll ask for Mantis developers kind of like next time. And then in Discord, let's go and fix that as well. In Discord. And you guys are, it's kind of a mix of section 1 and section 2. So I'm just going to take a look here for that stuff. So here's Discord. So for voice channels, did you want me to create a voice channel for you guys? Somewhere in section 1 or section 2, and I can do that so that way everyone knows it's you. It's for you. Do you prefer section 1 or section 2 to be the voice channel? Section 2, I think, is where you guys are anyway right now. Okay, so let's make a new voice channel. We'll call that same thing Mantis developers. That's there, and we'll create that channel. And later on, what we'll do is maybe if we have time, how about we actually make that a voice channel? Yes, that's what happens. Let's delete that channel. Hold on a second, and let's do that again. And I meant to do a voice channel with Mantis developers. There we go. All right, so that's you. So when you meet, you can meet there if you want. What I'll also do sometimes is meet with you guys on that channel. So I know, you guys are kind of there. And then what I can also do is eventually go through and modify the channel so only you guys can access it. So it's private just for you guys. So we'll do that later on. Okay, who else we have here? So we had, sorry, I just want to make sure we just don't show everything here. What about the other stuff? So let's go back up to discussions. So some people had issues with, being removed from groups and all that kind of stuff. So let's make sure that if there's anyone else that needs to be removed from a group, now's the time. Also, I know that Rajan, you are a part of a different group. What group are you part of, Rajan?
I'm part of a group 2.
Group 2. And okay.
Our name is runner-ups. I'm gonna write it down in
the chat. Yeah, go do it for me. Runner-up. Okay. That's fine. And I'm guessing you're also in section 2 because that's where you're at right now.
Yes.
Again, it doesn't really matter because I know that people are kind of going from different sections. So let's add another channel for you guys for that one. So that way, again, if you want to use that one, you can. It's not mandatory. Like if I'm making it just for you guys, just so you have a place to meet, and so you don't have to create your own server. Okay, that's the only reason.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else have any other group that's not these two? So I can make that now for you guys, and then it's kind of done, and then we can move on to other topics today. And if you are, and if you wanted for me to do this later on, I can totally change it, no problem. But again, please send me a DM or DM me on Discord or on even here on Zoom, and then what I can do is I can remove you from groups, or I can change your name, or do whatever you need to do. Okay, so that is a couple of groups that we have. That's pretty cool, and they're both groups of 6, which is really great because if you notice, what happens is they come kind of up the bottom now. And the great thing about this also is that when I kind of do your marking, then you'll be marked as Mantis developers or runner-up or whatever it's going to be, whatever the name is going to be. And you can see there's other groups here that I have to go and do the same thing with. Okay, that's great. So that's the first piece that I wanted to handle today. Let's get back to the topic of the day, which is converting our project to an API, what to do, what is an API, and so on. So we know that we're going to make an application programming interface is what an API is. but that again is very high level. So I'm going to go back to your week 6. So for you, if you want to follow along, you can. The last time we were together, we made this. I'm just going to go into week 6 and remove node modules just for now. And there are going to be issues with this, right? Because remember, I made some changes to the node modules so that we wouldn't have any issues with some of the errors that came up in TypeScript. But that's okay, because we're just going to fix that again. And just to refresh you guys on this. So whenever we have, just to start off, whenever we have any kind of front end that's custom, for example, you guys are talking about React. So let's go to React. By itself, React is just a front end. Okay, so there isn't any back end involved or anything like that. And we're going to take a look at some of this and talk about how to get started today as well, if we can. And when it talks about getting started with React, we want to use this idea of create React app, which is how to do it, right? So, and if you scroll down, they have a bunch of tutorials on how to do this, a step-by-step guide, to getting going. So if I go to step-by-step, you can see that it talks about kind of a few things. But I'll be honest with you, even if you were going to look at a step-by-step guide, or if you looked up online on LinkedIn Learning or anything else like that, the challenge is that some of this stuff, even now, is not exactly perfect, right? So, so how to do that? It talks about adding React to a web page in a minute, how to do that. And if you notice, there is, you kind of go here, and it talks about how to do this. But here's the full example that it's going to talk about, but it doesn't really talk about a backend at all. Okay, it doesn't talk about that. So that's how we start off. If it says create a new React app, it talks about the tool chain that you need and all that kind of stuff. And really, we're going to start right here where it says MPX. Now, here's something else that we had with React. We've never used MPX. We've used NPM or Yarn, but we're going to talk about what MPX is in a second. So this is where we would start. Okay, I'm going to come back to this though. Let's, postmark this page. But the first thing before we can start off is that there's going to be two pieces to your project right now. If you're going to go with the front end, that's different than the back end. And I'm just going to draw up some stuff for you guys here just to explain this piece. So again, there's two parts. There's your server. So here's your Express server. And the role in this case of the Express server is not to serve up the pages, but rather it's to connect to your data source. So for example, you might have a data source that's over here. Well, here it is. Let's draw it like this. And I'm not going to, be too artistic here, just to draw basically some kind of data source, and like so. And maybe if I'm lucky enough to draw the same kind of thing here at the end of the day. No, I cannot. Of course not. But the idea here is with this data source, and that's not kind of right, but anyway, whatever. Here's your data source. And our data source, as an example, is some kind of NoSQL database. Okay, it doesn't have to be MongoDB Atlas or MongoDB. It could be Firebase or something else, but that's the data source. Okay, so the data source communicates with your server. So that's what happens here. And so the server kind of goes out to the data source. This is how it goes, and asks the data source for information. And then it kind of feeds back into the server. So this is the request response that's happening with the Express server. And then what happens is, what we have is a bunch of API endpoints is what they're called. Okay, so, and that's part of your routing. So your routing is still going to be used here. You still have routing. But instead of routing up and, kind of allowing you to see, pages, your Express server doesn't do that anymore. It doesn't serve up the actual content. That's handled by something else, okay? Instead, what it routes for is your API endpoints. And the API endpoints serve up JSON data, That's what it is. Okay, so basically it takes the information from the server and basically supplies API endpoints for the front end to consume, is what we call them, right? So this is this piece. And so let's draw that part now. So that's the back end, and this is your front end. Oops. Let's make sure we can draw it somewhat similar. Here we go. And this front end would be whatever you want. So we'll say front end. That could be React or Angular or Vue or whatever, right? Whatever you want to choose to use. Okay. And the front end, that has to do with views, right? So views and content, right? That's really what the front end deals with from the get-go. However, the front end needs some other pieces to connect to the back end. One of the pieces the front end needs is some kind of services. It's got to provide services to, kind of connect to the back end. So we're going to talk about several services. And the services are like an HTTP service or something else like that, okay? And these services, these data services, like for example, security and all that, that's usually how they're bundled, right? Connect to the back end. And the way it's done is through, it's got to be secure because usually the front end and the back end are separate. So this is the back end, right? And they're separate servers completely. So this is your backend server and this is your front end server. Think they could actually be physically sitting on different boxes, like different hardware, okay, completely. And a lot of times we want to do that. So the front end basically wants to communicate to the back end, and the way it's done is through some kind of connection to the to your API endpoints. So we connect to the API endpoints, right? Whatever those are. We receive JSON data, right? So I'm going to draw arrows like they go like this, right? And that JSON data is the stuff that fills in the views and the content. That's how it goes. It's got to be secure, right? So secure connection, and it's going to be stateless. Let's say secure stateless connection, which means that we're not going to maintain state. Maintaining state is all around. It's on all the time. It's not on all the time. Whenever I need something, I go to the back end, right? And I create a connection, a temporary connection. I get my data, and then the connection closes. That's how it works, right? And I need to use some kind of JWT kind of security is typically what we use. So JWT is JSON Web Tokens, as opposed to the way we're doing it right now with sessions. So why do we need all this stuff? Because really, when you think about it, when the front end communicates with the back end, right? So I got this front end part, and I'm communicating with the back end. The back end doesn't know anything about the front end. And the front end, all it knows is about the API endpoints that we expose. Let's use those words. So we expose endpoints, right? Those are the words we want to use when it comes to the server. And on the front end, we consume. This is the terminology. We consume data. That's what we're doing. We're consuming the back end or the data from the back end. Okay. So we consume data. We expose endpoints. And so the back end doesn't know anything about the front end. The front end really knows and nothing about the back end except for API endpoints. And so there's got to be a secure connection that we kind of create. And that's why we use JWT security. Why? Because there is no sessions. Okay, so the session data that would be housed on the typically kind of in an express session or something like that is not applicable anymore. And it becomes more complex. So there's two things you're running at the same time. Right now, looking at our data right now, we only have really one thing, which is our back end, right? That was what we did with week 6. But now we need two parts. We need one part that's the back end, and we need another part that's the front end. Okay, so two different servers altogether. This is where it becomes more challenging. So guys, it's not too late. I'm just going to tell you this. Even though I know that Elias and Roshan, you guys have both said you want to do a back end and a front end that's separate. Remember, if I'm not going to feel bad and I'm not going to judge you guys, there's no judging here, okay, in terms of what the end result is going to be. If you guys decide that this is not what you're going to be able to do at the end. And the reason for this is because there's a lot of work for you guys to do between now and Sunday, like a pile of work to figure out and understand. And I'm going to get you started, but I can't give you, I'm not that I don't want you guys to do mean or whatever, but the options for the front end and the back end, that's why I'm talking about it here. Before we start, the options are, here's some options. So projects options for you guys, right? So one is just use Express. Okay, so that's like, using the EJS view engine. Okay, keep on going with what you have. That is the simplest option to use. Okay, option number 2 would be mean stack, right? So that's using Angular. Okay, and that's online. That's on the core shell. Okay, and the third one would be MERN stack, right? Which is React. And that's new because I don't have anything for you guys on the core shell, which means some of that may have to be done with your own research, research, some parts of this, because there's just no time for me to do everything with you guys for Sunday with everything else that we need to do. That it would take me probably a good couple of sessions to get everything that you need with this. I'll get you started, but it means that something that I want you guys to that to get you guys going. Okay. So those are the project options, and I'm posting this to you guys for everybody here, not just for you guys for your groups, but also for the groups that are on Wednesday as well, because I want you to understand that I'm not going to feel bad or be slighted or feel like you guys don't know anything or anything like that. I'm not going to judge you because, guys, there's a lot to learn, okay, to be honest with you. So to do this is just fine, okay? This is perfect, okay? It's okay. I'm going to be talking about how to do this, and if you follow along with me, you'll get it at the end. And if you want to convert over eventually, it's still possible. It's still possible later on if you guys start off with using this, submit your first release this way, and then eventually convert. Although I'll tell you that in my experience, when you start like this, you end like this because it's a lot of work to convert over. But it's not impossible. Okay, I'm going to tell you that. It's not impossible. So for this Sunday, my recommendation, if you're going to ask, is this. Do your EJS view engine. Okay, start off with that. Okay, and this way you start off and you get everything done for the requirements that I have for you that are due this Sunday. Then we'll see how this goes, how you feel comfortable with what we're doing. And if you feel more comfortable and you want to convert to Angular or React, Angular, there's lots of stuff online that's very good. And React, we're going to do together, okay? First things first, though, what we need to do is we need to convert our backend to an API. So let's do that now. First of all, any questions before we move on from this? And Elias, you said it best, hey, maybe we should just do, Express. And again, I don't think that's a negative thing. I think you're still going to have beautiful pages. You can still use a nice front end CSS framework of your choice. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, and the functionality will still be there. Why? Because there's a lot of stuff to handle as well, right? Or try to convert later, sure. I've also, on the core shell, let's go to the core shell for a second. On the core shell, oops, it's here. If you scroll down, I've got a couple of diagrams that I put up too. Because one of the things that most of you are doing a survey site. So there's some things to think about in this diagram. Now, this is from last, fall 2021, but it doesn't necessarily not apply to you now. Let's take a look at that. So what I did was I drew a diagram similar to what we just did. And I'm thinking about, okay, so how do you make a survey? Like, how does a survey look? And this is maybe one possible solution to your back end. For example, let's suppose I have my survey model. My survey model might have the name of the survey, the owner, survey ID, an array of questions, let's say 5, some kind of array of questions. Is it active or not? Maybe there's going to be a start date. There's going to be an end date. It might look something like this, yeah? Something like this. But then when we start thinking about the array of questions, we can break down questions to kind of look like this. The question itself, here's the question text. So each question is going to have a question text. an array of question options. Let's just say for, different kinds. So there's the question type that you might also want. For example, short answer, multiple choice, true, false, whatever the question type happens to be. There's going to be a specific survey ID. So it's going to link to the survey ID somehow. And there's also going to be a question ID. So because each of the options might also be an object, and you can have option text, the option value, the option ID, and so on, right? So that could be a way you do it. You can also convert, kind of cover all this in one model. So you can kind of have sub documents. That's one thing that you can do with a MongoDB. You can have, instead of having a survey ID that is separate and so on, I mean, obviously you'd still want this, but your questions, an array of questions, they could actually be, you can actually embed all of this inside of here. You could do that, okay? And you could also embed all of your options inside of here. So you could embed everything in one model. It's possible, for sure. That is definitely a way of doing it. And the other thing that you want to think about also is, well, responses, right? Where do the responses get saved? How do you save responses? It's another model, most likely, right? Now, nothing to say that you couldn't include the responses inside of your actual survey as well. So again, you can have almost like a hierarchy of stuff for your model. And so your responses could have a couple things. Each response is going to have a link to your question, whatever the question is, the option, if there's an option, the survey ID, and the response value, okay? So remember that the only person that has access to the responses is the owner of the survey. So that's something that you're going to think about. So then theoretically, you could have your survey collection, a question collection, an option collection, and a response collection. You could do this and break it out this way. You can also have it so that there's just one big survey collection and that's it. And then everything is embedded inside. It's truly up to you how you want to set this up and what mostly speaks to you, okay? So for Sunday, things that you do not need to do is what I put here is you don't need to make it pretty, okay, for Sunday. I don't need it to be like something that is going to wow me in terms of CSS. Remember, making it pretty is your final release. So I don't need that. I don't need it to be responsive either. It's not required. It doesn't need to include authentication. So please don't, if it's a lot of work for you guys to do, it's not required. The other one is it does not need reporting. So there's no reporting as an example for the responses, like how many responses you got in different parts and whatever. You don't need all these kind of things, okay? So that is, some, information that I've got here. So again, some rules to keep in mind are only owners can manage their own surveys. Any users can answer any active survey as an example. And that's kind of a little diagram I put because most people are going to probably do a survey. Now, some people are also going to do a tournament, and I didn't really map out what it would look like for the tournament, but it would be very similar to the idea for the tournament is going to be something like this, all right? There's not going to be questions and options, but the tournament was going to definitely have the name of the tournament, the owner of the tournament ID. In this case, instead of an array of questions, you're going to have participants. So who are the participants, right? You're probably going to have information on who's your first, second, third, and fourth place winners, because you're going to need to report that later on. And you probably want to keep track of each round. So the first round, which is your, getting all your, your participants as an example, and then who is part of the first round. It's going to be the people who registered, who's in the second round, who made it to the second round, what happened to the other people, they got removed, and then who's in the finals and semifinals. So those kind of things you're going to be keeping track of in the survey. It looks easier, but remember that the tournament site also has graphical requirements, right? Your graphics should pretty much work, but again, it doesn't have to look pretty. Okay, so keep that in mind for your tournament. All right, so that's one. The other thing I put down here is for the survey site, I also had proposed pages and structures for the survey site. So I know it's not pretty, but again, it's just a diagram. Almost think about this as like a whiteboard that I kind of diagrammed. So again, we talked about an EJS for the front end, which, or you can use React or Angular for as an option. MongoDB Atlas or some kind of NoSQL database. you know you need some components, a logo, and some navigation. So some kind of main navigation that you need. Pages. When you have your landing page, you might have a create button that creates a survey, as an example. And on your landing page, you're going to have a list of active surveys. And the list of active surveys might have different options. One of them might be a respond, an edit, and a delete. And that should be available to everybody right now because nobody's logged in. There's no registration required. So respond displays the survey, and it'll give you the ability to respond to questions, the survey questions that's been created. And then you have a submit button to submit your survey. So that's a page. This is a page, right? You might have a team page, a contact page. I recommend that it's online right from the beginning, just that way you can work out the challenges on Heroku or Azure or Amazon or Google or whatever front end cloud provider you choose. And I also recommend you work with MongoDB Atlas or Firebase from the beginning, as soon as possible. Don't try and run locally and stuff. I think there's a lot of work to do to convert, especially when you're working with multiple people in your team. So this is one page. This is another page, some kind of page that shows you the entire survey, a third page, a fourth page. You need to be able to edit a survey, right? So that's another page. So edit is a page. And create a survey is also a page. So that we're talking about several pages here to make your survey. Similar things are there for your, if you're making a tournament, in your landing page, you're going to have a create a new tournament button, which is going to take you to create a tournament page, right? You're going to have a list of active tournaments that you can look at. So very similar. And you can't respond to the tournament because, well, what you can do is you can manage the tournament. So that's one thing you'll be able to do with edit. You'll be able to view the tournament. I'll be able to view the tournament, manage the tournament, or delete the tournament, right? As an example, when I manage the tournament, I'm moving users from the first, the first round to the second round and so on. And you're going to see that the tournament page is going to have more pages. It's not just going to display the tournament, but also in the edit, it's not going to just edit one tournament. You're also going to be able to manage. So you might have a view, edit, manage, and delete. And the reason why edit and manage should be different is because if you think about it, edit is actually editing the name and all that kind of stuff. Manage is where I'm actually having an active tournament and I'm moving people from first round to second round, and I'm managing who the winners and losers are and a bunch of stuff. So there's more pages actually for the tournament site than there would be for the survey site, chances are. The other ones, team and contact, are going to be there, and all the rest of the stuff is the same. So I'm just talking about this in terms of requirements, okay, what we need for Sunday. Now let's move on to the discussion about this. So here's my week 6, and I want to convert this to an API for those people who want to have an optional front end. And let's see how this works. So one, we're going to copy it and paste it. So let's make that first. And we want to rename this thing to today's week 9, really. But let's call this the API, okay? And we can also just say backend. We'll call this backend API because this isn't really a week that we're gonna continue to have this thing. So backend API is this part, okay? And the reason why the backend API is going to be there, that's going to be separate from the front end, is because we're going to work on the front end with React. Okay, so let's bring up Visual Studio Code. One day when it feels like coming over. There we go. And I'm just going to drag and drop this in there. And we're just going to minimize this thing. So this is what we have, right? We have our backend API with the client and server. And let's think about the stuff that we need. I need to do a yarn install first thing to get that going. Let's get all those packages in there, right? Again, this is going back to what we had the last time we were together, okay? Awesome. And again, 5,000 changes or so. As you can see here. And we also want to do a Control-Shift-B because I want to start off the watch task. That was one of the challenges that people had in their test they talked about before. I forgot to transpile and those kind of things. And you can see that that is still an issue. Passport local schema it doesn't understand what that means, and a bunch of other stuff that's going to come up here in the models. And remember what the reason why we have this problem in the user model, which is not going to go away in this particular case if we're going to do the same thing, is because passport local schema does not compute. And the way we fixed this was I went to go to definition here for passport local schema. And so this is the definition inside of our project, right? So here's passport local model. And you can see that passport local model, it needs, from an authenticate perspective, the user is of type T, whatever the type is. And passport local schema, which is here, it needs, like it says, a doc type, a model, an instance, and all this kind of stuff. And the way I fix this is just to make it so that each of these is an empty object by default. So that's how I fix the problem. So that if I press save there, then if I go back to my to see if there's a problem, you can see that the problem is now gone away. Okay, so I'm not giving it everything it needs, but I'm just saying that in the order, everything has a default. Okay, and that takes away my issue. And then of course, whenever I start off something, I also want to test to see if it's working. So let us do a couple things. First of all, in my config, you can see my DB uses my remote URI right now, and my local URI is there. And in my app.ts, what I have, just to start going, if you look, is I try to connect my remote URI, db.remote URI is the connection. That's what I'm trying to do. But what if the connection doesn't exist? I kind of made a little thing here to say that if the connection doesn't exist, then what you can do is you can fix this. So you can say either remote URI, or if it doesn't exist, try the dbconfig dot local URI, which is what I want to do, right? So either one or the other. But the way this would work is if I went and did something like this. If I said, if dbconfig remote URI exists, if that exists, then we want to have my remote URI in here, right? Or, right? If it exists, then do that. Did I do it wrong? I don't think so. Or do the dbconfig dot local URI. Okay, so that's how it works. And that's a ternary operator. Remember, the ternary operator works. Anything after the question mark is true, and anything after the colon is false. So we kind of return this part out here. That's the thing that we want. And then notice that the connect is something that we want to return out. So how do I do this? It's either I want to return this thing. This thing is going to be equal to, I'm either going to return, I'm checking to see this. That's what I'm doing, right? And if this exists, then I return this part in here inside of my mongoose.connect. I check to see this, and if this doesn't exist, then I return this part in here. Okay. Similarly, then, if from a hostname perspective, I can say, instead of using the hostname itself, I can do the same check. I can say, okay, well, if the remote URI exists, let's say, if the remote URI exists, then what I want to do is add hostname. And notice in hostname, we had MongoDB Atlas. That's where I want to go. But what if it doesn't exist? Then it won't be the host name that I want, but rather it's going to be called something like localhost. Okay? So if I save this, and if I run MongoDB locally, so let's do MongoDB. So if I type in Mongodb, here's MongoDB working locally. I'm gonna kind of minimize this. And let's start off with a nodemon. If everything goes well, I should see localhost. Okay, so let's see what happens when it connects, trying to. And it says, hey, let's connect. It's connected to MongoDB at MongoDB Atlas. Huh. Well, okay, that's interesting. Did it though? Did it? Let's see. And a couple things, right? Well, if you notice in my db.ts, I have my remote URI here physically, right? And that's why it's able to connect to MongoDB Atlas, right? But what if I said, instead of this, MongoDB Atlas, right? Because that's what it was. It's not this, but rather it's process.environment.remote URI, because that's what it should be. Remember, we should store our MongoDB Atlas connection criteria, kind of in the on the server, right? So take a look at this. So first it was there because we had our connection information here in the remote URI, but now it's switched to localhost because you know what? We can't connect directly because remote URI isn't found. Okay, so Rajan says, what was the first step? So the first step, the only thing I did was I just downloaded the project, like I said, or I made a copy. I fixed the model problem that we had, which is I went into Passport Local Schema. I clicked right here, right-clicked and go to definition. And I changed these by adding in these curly braces, because that means that by default, doc type model, which was missing, T instance methods and T query helpers were all going to be empty objects, worst case scenario. So I start them off as empty. So even if I don't pass, the user doesn't pass anything in, they start off with something. And that's why I did that. That was my first part. So fix the error is what I did, right? And then part two, after I fix the error is, and there's no more error in the models, then in my config, I didn't change anything, but I went into my app.ts. And what I did up here was it's trying to connect to my remote server, but what if it doesn't exist is what I'm saying. What if I don't have information? I want to be able to work both locally and remotely with the same piece of code. And that's what I did here. So I kind of basically said, let's make a switch case. This is kind of like an if statement, right? Where if remote URI doesn't exist, or it does exist, then we can have whatever the remote URI is here to connect to. But if it doesn't exist, then we use local URI. Okay, that's kind of where we are right now. But this is, kind of what we're doing with our local host. And if I was to go here and just type in localhost 3000, we're going to get this. And this is not what we want. We do not want our API to give us any pages at all. This is actually wrong. This was okay for what we did last time, but it's not okay for if we're going to use an optional front end. We need to convert our back end to an API. So what does that look like, and what the heck am I talking about? Well, let's go back to this. And right now, if you look, all the work we need to do is in our controllers, okay, for the most part. Here is a convention, though, in our app.ts, So this is inside of our config app.ts. The convention is, we don't change any of this yet, but if I scroll down to this part, which is the routes, for my index router, for my movie list router, for my auth router, all of these things should start with /API, okay? That's what it should start with, okay? So please change all that to API first. That is, I'm telling you right now, that is just a convention. Do you have to have this? No, but it would be this that we want to do first. So API means I'm identifying all of these all of these routes that we had before as a bunch of endpoints, okay? So if I went there and I went back to this and if I refreshed, you're going to see that I get a 404 now, right? Why? Because there is no localhost 3000. From now on, you have to put in something like API /, and that's where it's going to start. API, if I put something like that here in the routes, it creates a prefix for it. So everything must start with an API, something like this. That's what it means. Okay, so that's number one. Next, what I want to do is, now that I've changed the prefix to this, in my routes, let's go to look at the routes, and let's see which routes are viable and which ones are not. Index.ts. Question, will I display my home page? Will I display my home page anymore? My about page, my projects page, my services page, my contact page? Will I display any of this stuff anymore with my backend? What do you think? Nope. So really, the index router is absolutely useless, which means then that the index controller also is absolutely useless because none of this is required, okay? which means that if I go back to my app.ts here, then what I want to do is literally get rid of my API for my index router. So no more index router, get rid of it. Goodbye, right? And if I scroll up all the way to the top, I don't need this index router reference whatsoever. So let's get rid of this too. Goodbye. And you're going to be like, oh no, what did you do, Tom? Well, you don't need those things. You just need the movie list router and the auth router. Those are the two things you need, because at the end of the day, those are the pieces of information you have. The rest is going to be handled by the front end, right? Which means, going back, that I don't need my index controller. I can get rid of them. Goodbye. Delete. Okay. And I don't need my index router. Goodbye. I don't need these either. Goodbye. Right? Because those are not required anymore. Okay. I also don't need my views. If I look at my content views, I don't need my about view, my contact view, and blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to leave them there, because if I want to, instead of reinventing the wheel and copying, and I can just copy and paste from here, as an example, into my my new front end that I'm going to make eventually with React. So for now, let's leave this here, but eventually we're going to clean this up. Also, if I go back to my app.ts, I don't really need a couple of additional components. I don't need to define views anymore. I don't need this part, right? Because if you think about it, I'm not going to have a view engine, period, the end. There's not going to be a view engine anymore, all right? So this part would also be useless. Now let's comment it out, and I want to show you what happens. So if I comment this out like this, so no view engine, right? If I press save, and I go back out here, and if I type in something like API/movie list, right, it's going to say error, no default engine was specified, and no extension was provided. Okay, so that is what's happening right now. Okay, but that's okay, because we have some issues to discuss. So for now, let's just uncomment those. Let's uncomment them back the way they were. And let's go back and look at that API again. So if I was to type in something like API/movie list, right? Movie list. Then you're going to see that it says login is not found, because there isn't a login. And the reason why this is doing this is because it's trying to authenticate the user, but there's no authentication mechanism yet. And that's a normal thing. Okay, believe it or not. Okay, cool. So we're starting things off just like this. Let's leave this in place for now, but we're going to get rid of this because we don't need it anymore. There's no more views on the back end. The views are all going to be handled on the front end. So how do we modify stuff so that it is reasonable? How do we modify things so that it makes sense? Because we don't want this anymore, right? We don't want that. We want instead for us to start looking at modifying our controllers so that they return the right type of thing, okay? And again, we want authentication to work, but let's talk about how this is going to work here. So first, let's go back to our controllers. We don't want to modify our roots. So actually, let's go back to roots for a second. Movielist.ts. Here's something. Okay, movielist.ts. The movie list itself, remember, I didn't really, in this particular case, I didn't show you how to do full CRUD in this version of my code. Then that's okay, because I have a full CRUD somewhere else. But what we have is a router.get movie list, and it's kind of protected. That's what it is right now, right? So how do I change this? So instead of using a get movie list like this is, kind of, I'm getting a request. That's what this request is. It's being guarded. AuthGuard is going to work, and I want to display my movie list. Okay. Question for you is, right, from an AuthGuard perspective, is if they're not logged in, I want to return, that they're not logged in properly. That's what I want to be able to do. So routes are still required on the back end, because we want to basically not allow things to be seen, right? As an example, with our list. That's what we don't want. We don't want that stuff to happen, right? So, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just disable any kind of security. So we're just going to get rid of this altogether. Just going to get, start with this. And if I press save here, save. And if I go back to here, and if I look at API/movie list, and press enter, we should see a list that looks like this. And now you're going to say, wait, why am I not seeing any CSS? Why am I not seeing any CSS? Well, because that was a problem we handled earlier, where I want to see movie lists, but I'm actually looking at API/movie list. And in my view, this is kind of in our views, inside of our views, if I scroll down to my index.ejs, because we're still using views for now, right? Notice that all of this has a /, and I handled this last time. This is a little bit of review. We can just get rid of this / and put just a slash. And if I did that, and if I press save, and if I refresh, you're going to see now we're going to get this again. Okay, so that's kind of what we had last time. So we have a few movies here, and these movies are local. I'm using my local database for this stuff. Okay, awesome. So that's kind of the first part, making it work without any kind of security. Next part is, how do I convert this from returning to do a res render? Remember, this is the problem. If I'm doing a res render, I'm using my view engine. I don't want to do a res render anymore. That's not what I want to do. In fact, what I want to do instead is return JSON data. Okay, so how do I do that? So the first thing you got to think about is I want to display my movie list, and I'm going to still do movie.find and all this kind of stuff. This is good. But instead of this, right? Instead of this, let's just comment this out for a second. And let's talk about something else I can do instead. All right. So I'm not going to render anything. Render means draw. I don't want to draw anything anymore. What I want to do is I want to res.json, right? And I want to respond. That's the respond with JSON data. Okay, cool. The first part is, it says, what's the body of the JSON data I'm going to respond with? I want to create a new object, okay, the new object. Inside there, I can define several things. First of all, if I made it here somehow, I want to say that the response is true. I made it here, and that means I was able to successfully get to this API. It means I've logged in somehow. Okay, that's what it means. I'm also going to have a message, right? And the message is going to be something like, your movie list was successfully displayed. And this is for us, for debugging purposes. So I'll say something like movie list, right, displayed successfully. So this is for me. This is not for the user. And the other part that I want to do is I want to say something like movies, and I want to pass in the movies collection, just like we did before. So movies collection, there it is. And I want to do my user, right, which is the request.user. I want to kind of push that out as well. That's it. That's what I want. I don't care about the username, the display name, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not doing that right now. All I'm doing is pushing out the data from my movie list that's displayed correctly. Okay, that's the one API that I have. Okay, let's save that. And if I go back out to here to my movie list, and if I do refresh, I'm going to get JSON data like this. Guys, this is the format I need. I need JSON data in my API. If I have JSON data in my API, right, it's a beautiful thing. And why is it a beautiful thing? Because now I can take this JSON data and convert it to something that the front end can consume. Okay, that is the only thing that your movie list is going to want. So that is the non-security part. So it's basically just returning data. Okay, so that's the first piece. The authentication piece is something else I want to talk about, right? So that's the movie list page. Let me put this up on GitHub for you guys. So I'll say, make another PowerShell. Here's the PowerShell. And I'll say git add dot. Here it is, git commit -m, and I'll say started converting backend to API, and then git push. So you'll have that up online as normal. Remember, you can always find anything that we do together up online on GitHub, /Centennial. So let's take a look at that. where that is, where that lives. That's up here. So if I go to github.com/Untitled, and if you see what I've done is I've added in this backend API, started converting back into an API. That's where it is. This is the labs that I'm looking at right now. So you can always follow along here if I went too fast. Next, let's get back to this. So now that we've done that, we've converted this is one controller and one root. All we have is our movie list, right? As an example, the movie list just to show the movie list. And then on the back end, we have the controller that does that. How about the authentication? So question, will we display the login page? What do you think? Will we ever display the login page? Yes or no, guys? On the back end. Let's see if you guys are, what do you guys think? Josh says no. Correct. We're not going to display any pages anymore. So that means that I'm not going to display my login page or my register page, but I am going to process my login page. I am going to process my register page. I am going to process the logout page. I'm going to do all the processing part, but I don't need to do the display part anymore. So going back to my routes again, if I go back to my auth.ts, the display pages are not required anymore. Let's get rid of them. So this is my router. So no more display pages. I'm not going to display them because displaying is part of the front end, not the back end, right? So I only have processing that I'm going to do on the back end, okay? And those are the three routes that we're going to have left: login, register, and logout, and they're just going to be processing pages. That's what's going to happen there. Cool, excellent. Well, what does it look like on the controller side? If I go to auth.ts, then I can get rid of these two functions. So I don't need these two functions anymore because the display functions are absolutely useless. Goodbye. And if I don't care about displaying, then I don't need my user display name, so that can be gone too. Okay, so now we're just left with this. Save. And I want to process my login page. I want to be able to do that, but we have some issues. Up until now, we've been using Express session, and I need to add some kind of authentication piece that's going to be supportive of JWT, right? Remember I talked about JWT security as something that we need, JSON Web Tokens. We started setting the requirements for that up here inside of my app.ts. So notice here I have my Express, my path, my cookie parser logger, session, passport, flash, and cores. We need a couple of additional modules here for this to work properly. So let's head back to my app.ts and talk about the stuff that we need here and how this is going to work. So modules for authentication, we've used these parts, and I've got cores for JWT support, but we need more for JWT support. We need a couple of additional modules. One of them is something called Passport JWT. Let's get that in there right now. So again, let's go here and let's add that new module in. So I'm going to say yarn add, right? And we're going to add something called Passport dash JWT. Let's add that in. And that's the first thing we're going to add in. And we also want support for that. So I'm going to say yarn add at types passport dash JWT minus dev, which is the dev dependency piece. Okay. So again, I added those two. So let's take a look at that. And so you see what I'm talking about. So inside of my package.json now, here's my package.json. New things that we've added in are, like we said, we added in passport JWT, right? As well as the type definition for passport JWT here. Notice that the passport definition is considerably older. Passport JWT is like 4, and passport JWT here is at 3. Uh-oh. Remember what we talked about before? That maybe our passport, if I look down inside my node modules, and if I looked at passport JWT just by node modules itself, is there a type definition built in? Sometimes there is. Now here in this case, we have our library, and here's a bunch of headers, right? But we don't see a index.d.ts file, which is the type definition library. We don't have that. So it means we need the type definition. If without this, then we would get some issues with TypeScript. So if I look at @types, and if I go down into passport JWT, and I look in there, you can see that I do have an index.d.ts file, and that tells us our type definitions for this, right? Which is that passport strategy. All right, so it gives us some definitions for what this thing is. All right, so this is the thing I need. So that's what these modules are. The type definition modules are just helper modules, right? Okay, so I'm just showing you this so you understand. So the first thing we did was we loaded in this new thing, but I need to have support for it. So I'm going to say under cores, under around line 17 on the app.ts, because I want to support a JWT security, I'm going to say, let's do the next part, which is import. We'll call this passport JWT from passport JWT. Okay, so that's kind of what we did before. So that's kind of something we need to do to support JWT security. Okay. I also need to define some aliases now. Okay, so this is a couple of additional things. Let's define JWT aliases to make it easier for us to work with. Let's say that JWT strategy, that's going to be the new thing, is equal to a passport JWT, which is that part right there, passport JWT dot strategy. So that way we don't have to type this the entire time, passport JWT strategy, right? We just have to say JWT strategy, and that'll equal this. All right, so that's an alias. The other one is, if I want to extract JWT, again, that's going to be equal to passport JWT dot extract JWT. That's another thing that we're going to have. So those are the two aliases that we're going to make up. Okay. So far, so good. Johan says, can I look at the last command? So yeah, the last commands are these two. You're talking about the last commands for yarn add, I'm guessing, Johan. Right? Correct? Hopefully you guys are good. No problem. So that's the next piece. So we start thinking about authentication objects, and we have local strategy. We have our user model. Those are okay. We have our definition for our routers and all those things. We kind of moved past this part. We talked about our DB config and how to connect. We skipped by our views and our view engine. We're going to go past our session. We're going to leave session in place for now. Okay. And we have our Flash. By the way, do we really need Flash anymore? Probably not. And we have our passport initialize and session. And then we have our strategy, serialize the serializing users. None of this is going to change. But then before our routes, we need to start configuring our JWT. Let's set up for JWT. Set up JWT options. Okay. And what this is going to look like is we're going to say let JWT options equal to, and we're going to make a kind of an object where I'm going to say JWT from request. That's going to equal to extract JWT dot from, and this is kind of a weird thing, from auth header, right? From auth header as bearer token. Okay, that's the first one. And the other one is secret. We're going to call this or key, and that's going to equal to my db config dot session secret, or secret is what we're going to call it. That's what we called it before. And that is an option, almost like a set of options that we're going to use with JWT. This is the most important piece right here. All right. So basically what we're going to be using is a bearer token, a token that's going to be passed along from the back end to the front end. And what we're going to say is, hey, here's my token. I've given you a token. once you're logged in, you're going to send the token back to me and say, this is me. This is the token you've given me, right? And if the tokens don't match somehow, then you're not logged in properly. You'll be logged out, and you will be redirected back to a secure area. You won't be given anything. All right, so that is my setup JWT options. Now let's set up the JWT strategy. So set up JWT strategy. And the way this looks is we're going to say that strategy, we're going to call it strategy, lowercase s, is equal to a new JWT strategy. And we're going to pass in the JWT options, which we just made, right? Followed by an anonymous function that's going to come up with something called a Jwt Payload. That's going to be the payload, and a done function. Okay, follow me here, and then I'll explain all this stuff in a bit. And what we want to do is I want to go to my user object, and I'm going to say user. I want to find by ID. So we're actually going to do a little bit of access to the database. And I'm going to pass in the Jwt Payload, right, .id. So that's something that we're going to pass into the user. We're going to use something called promises here, because this is how this works. We're going to say then, after we've passed it in, if the user exists, let's use a fat arrow function in this case. If the user exists, as an example, then what I want to do is I want to return done, null, and user. That's what I want to do. If the user doesn't exist, let's catch if there's a problem, catch. And I want to catch the error where I want to pass in this object, and I want to return done where there is no user and it's false. So I'm not logged in properly. Yes, so this little part right here is basically a way. So strategy is going to basically pass in the options, and it's going to check to see if the bearer token, the token that we're getting, exists. If it doesn't, then it's going to give us this error. If it does, it's going to find the user, and it's going to return the user itself that we found. That's what it's going to do. Okay. So that's kind of the setup process. Right. And then what we want to do is we want to use this strategy with passports. We're going to say, hey, passport, let's use the new strategy. So I want to be able to enforce this strategy when it comes to how we're going to have information about the bearer, the token, all that kind of stuff. And that's really it. That's my setup for JWT on the configuration side, right, on the app config. So let's save that. And again, it shouldn't cause an error. So when we go back to back here, because we're not really using this strategy right now. So if I go back to here, and if I go to localhost, and if I refresh, so far, same thing. No errors. We don't have an error that comes up here anywhere, right? So there's no errors happening inside of our nodemon. You can see that there's nothing going on. We can see that we're just getting information from the movie list right now. Okay? Because we haven't really signed in yet. We haven't done that part. So now that we've done the configuration on the front end, the app.ts, we need to do the configuration for authentication on the controller side, right? Otherwise, we can't secure anything. All right, so how does that look? Because that's the next step. So in the controller side, what we want to do is, for the authentication piece, up at the top, we're going to need to be able to generate a token. And so something that we're missing here is the ability for us to generate a token. And we want to be able to do that and retrieve a token from anywhere. The best way to do this is to use our util method. Remember our util functions? We had a couple of them, right? In our util folder, we had two functions. We had a user display name and an authguard function, right? Let's go back to that for a second and modify our util function to add one more function to the mix, which is going to be the ability for me to generate a token. Okay, that's what I want to be able to do. So how do I do that? So at the top, we have Express. And what I want to do is I want to enable JWT. Let's do that. So we'll say enable JWT from JSON Web Token. Right, that's what we want to do. So we're going to say import JWT from JSON Web Token. That's what we want. Now, remember that JSON Web Token would have had to be installed already on your system. Let's see if that's even there right now. So if I go back to my node modules or my package.json, then we should see JSON Web Token somewhere, okay? And did we ever install JSON Web Token in my dependencies? And the answer is we have not yet. So even though it's working, it's working because something else has installed it. Let's install it for ourselves. So what I mean by that is if I go to my PowerShell, we need another installation. We need to do a yarn add, and it's JSON Web Token, exactly what it says. So JSON Web Token. Okay, there's our JSON Web Token. So it says pattern JSON Web Token A51 is trying to unpack in the same destination as this app data local yarn, and it says that integrity modules, there might be a pattern problem. Well, what this means is that inside of my node modules here somewhere, then it's been duplicated somewhere. So there's JSON Web Token right there. Here's JSON Web Token. I also need a support for JSON Web Token. So I want to say yarn add at types, and again, JSON Web Token -- dev. So we'll get that. It also tells me that that is an issue, right? I'm okay with it because for me, I'm good to go. If I look here at the at types folder, then you can see that JSON Web Token is also here. It gives me an index.d.ts file, which allows me to do things like the kind of sign-in options and a bunch of other stuff that I can do, which is what I need to get support on. Okay. So JSON Web Token is required. And actually, let's just go over before I move on, because there's a lot here to unpack. I want to go with my package.json and make sure we have everything we need. So I'm just going to look at my package.json one more time to make sure that I don't have to install anything else. So I've got, I'm just kind of looking here at my notes. Cookie parser, cores, debug, EJS, Express. We're probably not going to need all this eventually. JSON Web Token, which is here. Mongoose, Morgan, Passport, Passport JWT, Passport Local, Mongoose. I think we got everything now. Okay, at this point. I don't think there's anything else we need. Okay, and let's get back to what I was doing, which is using our JSON Web Token inside of our authentication chain. So I'm going to go back to my controllers, auth.t.ts, and like we had here, I need to refer to the util, which is inside of util index.ts. I'm going to make a brand new function, like I talked about before, and that function is going to help us with generating a token. And we want to do that. We could be needing to do that in multiple places. So let's make a brand new function. I'm going to say export a function that is going to be called generate token, and it's going to have a user, which is of type user document, okay, and it's going to return a string type. So how does this work? I'm going to have something called a payload, and I want you to think of what a payload is. The payload is going to be the information about the user, okay? So that's the payload. So we're going to say that's equal to a couple of things when I generate the token. I'm going to have an ID, which is my user._ID. I'm going to have a display name. There's my display name now, which is my user.display name. I'm going to have my username, which is my user.username. There it is. I'm going to have my email address. This is part of my payload. I'm going to kind of serialize this. And here's my email address. I'm going to have this as part of my payload. From a JWT options perspective, when I set things up, right, one thing I want to set up is how long the token lasts, how long this token is going to be, kind of working. So I'm going to say expires in is what it's going to be, and some amount of time, which is 60,000 for, kind of 604,800 seconds, which is about 1 week. Okay, that's what the expiration date is. I could make this smaller, and expires in has a lot of different options, not just this. I can also say 1 day or an hour or whatever it's going to be. For now, for us, it's going to be 1 week. And then finally, I want to, here's my return type. I'm going to return jwt.sign. This is part of the Jwt project. I'm going to pass in my payload, and I'm going to use my dbconfig.secret, right? And then finally with Jwt options. And that is what it's going to return. Okay? So why is it arguing about dbconfig? Because we don't have dbconfig installed here. It can't find dbconfig, which is up here now. If you look at the requirements, we've added in Jwt, and we also want to import, let's just do this, import star as dbconfig from, and it's /config/db. And that should handle that error. Right. Okay. So there we go. That's the first piece. And we're not perfect yet, but we've created our little, kind of our, we've configured our little function that allows us to generate a token, a unique token. That's what Jwt sign does. It takes the payload information, right, and it encrypts it so that when it creates a unique token based on the user information, as well as to send this to the front end and basically say, hey, you've asked me for a token, you've logged in properly. As an example, here's your token, right? And now whenever you access anything from me, please use this token as long as you're logged in. When you're not logged in anymore, get rid of the token. That's up to you to do. If you get rid of that token, then you won't be logged in anymore and you won't be able to see my information. That's what this generate token does. Okay. So let's put that up on GitHub. So we'll say git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say added util function to support Jwt, git push. Okay. Still not complete. We're just still configuring. And in my auth.ts now, I'm just working on this. In my auth.ts, I want to do the same thing with my controllers now. So now that I have that, I need to import that information. So I'm going to go here at the top. And we need to import the, kind of Jwt Utility Function, right? And what that looks like is we're going to say import, and we're going to call it generate token from util, okay? And this way we can use generate token when we're authenticating. Okay, so authentication is pretty much, when we process my login page, it's going to be the same. We still have the same stuff here. However, let's just talk about this. Do we need a flash message? And the answer is no, we do not. We do not need a flash message when there's no user anymore. So here we can get rid of this, no more flash, because we're not going to display the message anymore there. In fact, we're not going to res redirect anymore. Instead of res redirecting, we're going to response with JSON. So how do we do that? We're going to say res.json. If there's no user, the success then is false, right? If there's no user. And we're going to do a message that says something like, error, right? Authentication failed. Something like that. So that is if there's a login problem, if the person can't log in. However, what if there is no problem? So we're going to skip this part. Instead of res redirecting, we don't want to res redirect to the movie list anymore. That's to be done on the front end. On the back end, what we want to do is we want to generate a token. So let's get rid of this piece. No more returning this part. Where I want to return is down here. So this is where we're going to return. And because we need a return type down here as well. Up here, instead, I want to start off by doing something like this. I want to say const our auth token, our authentication token, is equal to the generate token function, where I'm going to pass in the user information that I just got. Okay, so I just logged in. Here's my user information. I'm going to pass in this user information to the token, which is going to generate a brand new token for me, which is going to be based on the user information. That's going to create a unique token that I can pass around. Token being an encrypted code, basically, or a key, if you will. And then I'm going to return response.json. Okay, here's my response.json. So the first object is going to be a success, which is going to be true. We've logged in. Okay, the message for us when it comes to troubleshooting is going to be something like user logged in successfully, right? And then we're going to have a user object, so a sub object, which is in here. And the sub object is going to be, it's going to look like this. The ID, which is the user.id. I want to kind of display this for my purposes. My display name is our user.displayname. I'm going to expose this stuff so that way I can test to see that I'm getting things back out of here. My username is my user.username. And my email address is my user.email address. There it is. Okay. Followed by a comma and a token, which is my auth token. This one. Okay. And that is what I'm going to return. So this return statement is going to return the requirement that I have, which is going to return JSON data. That's if I'm logged in properly. Okay. And that is my process login page. So let's put that up on GitHub. So git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say modified process login page for for JWT, Git push. So again, we're not going to redirect or do anything like that. That's going to be done by the front end. All the back end is going to do is going to say you're logged in or you're not logged in. Okay. The register page. Let's do that part. So this part's correct because we're still going to have a form that's going to be passed into this page, no problem. But this part is not correct anymore, right? So there's some stuff that we need to remove. So again, if there's error.name, this is for our messages, but request flash can go because we're not going to actually send anything to the pages anymore. And same thing with this piece here with the console error, we can get rid of that. But my response redirect, if I have an error, is not going to be a response redirect. Remember, there is no redirecting on the back end like this. It's just going to say response.json, or we're going to pass in a message that says success false, right? So it's not logged in. And we're going to say that some kind of error, like a registration error. So error, registration failed. Okay, so that we know there's a problem. Okay, but what about if everything is okay? We're not going to automatically log in the user anymore. So this part is gone. Can't do that anymore, right? We're going to actually have the front end do everything that has to happen. So what we're going to do is do something like this. We're going to go return res.json. And what we're going to return here is, remember, success is true. we're going to make just messaging is what we're doing here, right? And we're going to just send a message back that says, we're just user registered successfully. And you're going to be, wait, I don't understand. Because people are, always going to say something like, well, there's nothing that's been done here, Tom. What are you talking about? Actually, that's not true. Once I go through the user.register, if I was to pass through this function, then the user's been registered. That's what happens. This takes care of everything on the front end, on the back end for us, right? Because it creates a new user object. It kind of uses the password, and it creates the new user and stores it in our database. So if this has an error, it's going to return that there's an error. If there's no error, then it's just going to return success. So what we're looking for really on the API is almost a message, a toggle. It's true, you're logged in, or you've done everything you asked me to do with your directive, or false, it failed. One of the two. Okay. So that is the process register page. Let's put that up on GitHub. So we'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say modified process register page for JWT. And notice it said it deleted a bunch of stuff. Okay. So it says it deleted a bunch of stuff from week 6 finally, right? These are all the things that finally it figured out it had to do. It didn't do that up until now. Look at these 4,000 things, right? Up until now, it didn't do this part, but now it's suddenly going to figure out that we need to delete something, right? So, so that's something that, let's take a look here, and you can't look further up. So let's take a look at that last command. Did I do it properly? So it says git commit -m. Okay. Did I do a git add dot? I did. And then what I want to do is, after I've done this, it's git push, which is going to push that up to thing. But so really what I want to do is git add dot if there's anything to save. And you know why I didn't do it? Because I didn't save this thing. Let's do that again. So git add dot. Let's do this. And let's do that. And the reason why this is still like 4,000 is because we need to go up one level. And we're going to do here, we're going to say git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say remove node modules from week 6. That's what the problem was. And then there it is, git push. So that'll get rid of all those little weird errors over here. Awesome. Let's go back to the file we have, which is we're inside our backend API. That's where we are. All right, so that is our register page. What about our logout page? What about a logout page? What happens there? Well, this piece is correct, right? We log out. This piece is not correct. We're not redirecting. So again, going back to here, we're going to say res JSON, and we're going to say that success is true, and our message is going to be, user logged out successfully. Okay. That's performing the logout function. So it physically logs us out, right? Let's make sure it's spelled properly, success. And so we're looking for success as one of the objects that we're going to pass through. Okay, so this is finished. This is kind of finishing off our API the way we have it. Now, the API is missing a couple of things. We don't have an edit. We don't have an add. We don't have all those things. We kind of had that before, right? And I kind of made a little video about that, about editing and adding and all that stuff. And I created that video, if I'm not wrong. I may have put it inside of, did I put it on section 1? Let's see if I did. I'm just going to look here just to see what my controllers look like for my movie list. I'm just going to edit this just really quickly and see what that looks like. And if it's not here, we did. Yeah, this is where I actually did it on the other, for the other course, the other section. So I actually did a movie with this one, a little video. I'm just going to take this part here, and I'm going to add some of these things. So process delete, process edit. I'm going to take those pieces, and I'm just going to, if you don't have these pieces, I'm just going to go here to, I don't think there's anything else here. So those are the pieces. Yep. I'm going to put those pieces back into the project, which is going to be just a second. And by the way, for you guys, if you want the movie list complete, I'm just going to pass that into your chat there, so you can use that version of the movie list .ts file instead of the one that I've already given you as a reference, right? Because that's what I worked on in the little movie I did for full CRUD. Okay. But what we need is inside of our movie list, we need these other things. So I'm displaying the movie list. That's good. But I also want to process. I want to process some stuff here, and this is part of it. The error callback, right, is something that I'm going to work with in a second. So let's just get rid of that. So if I type in error, callback, I think it's callback error. There we go. And what did that do? I think it added that into Mongoose. That's right. That's good. Okay. So obviously these are no good because process edit. Oh, I think we're missing also process add. Did we do the add page? I may have missed that from the other thing here. Centennial. And I think it's under section 1. That's the other section. That's why I'm looking here, guys. I'm so sorry. But I don't want to reinvent the wheel here and redo that. We just don't have no time for that. So I'm just going to grab that and edit it again. And the one thing I'm missing is the display add page, process add page. I don't know why I missed that part, but I guess I just didn't copy paste it. There we go. Process add page. So process add page also has to be different than process edit page. So we're just going to put that in here. So this is the, oh no, we have it. Here's process add, process edit, and process delete. Good. Okay. So how does this change? How does these change up? Because these are wrong too, right? Because we can't redirect anymore, right? We're going to respond with JSON. So let's figure this out too. How does this going to look like now? Maybe you guys can guess what it's going to look like. Okay. So if I process my add page, what do I put here instead of a redirect? Help me out. Let's see if you can figure this out. What would I put here? So respond, we'll start with response.json, an object. And the first thing is, what's the first property? So you follow the pattern here. Success, thank you. So success. If I've got to this point, right, as an example, then success is true, right? Because I went to add the movie. I'm able to add the movie and all that kind of stuff. My message is going to say something like successfully added movie, okay? And what I want to pass into this object is my movie, which is going to be called my new movie, right? That's kind of what I'm going to pass in there. That's what I'm going to respond with, right? So I can see the movie that I've created. That's the create piece, okay? So I'm using the, I'm doing full CRUD, and that's processing the add page, okay? How about processing the edit page? Do I need that part, right? And yes, I do. And at the bottom here, I make a new movie. I use update 1, and instead of redirecting, if I can get to this, I'm going to do a response.json where I have a success, right? And the success is going to be true, and my message is going to be successfully edited movie. And what movie did I edit? I'm going to pass in the movie, which is my updated movie. Okay. So again, all I'm doing is updating the response instead of a redirect to a response JSON. And so it's a communication. Remember, response JSON is just going to be communication messages. How about delete? Okay, this is the last one. Instead of a res redirect, it's going to be the same code, except that it's going to be res.json. Oops. And it's going to be success is true. And my message is going to be successfully deleted contact, or movie in this case. There we go. Contact, movie, book, whatever. It's all the same. So there's not a lot here. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like there's a lot to do. We still need the functions. These functions are the things that we talked about in my little full crud movie that I made with you guys, right? But that's really it. So there is display movie list, process add page, process edit page, and whatever. We're missing the API endpoint store. This is just a controller piece. What we're missing also is the routes. So movie list only has one route. What does the route look like for this? Because we need routes for my add and edit and all that stuff, right? So we need a router.post, right? Let's write it together. So a router.post, and the post is going to be /add, right? So I want to add a movie, and I'm going to process the add page, the purple one, right, which adds that in. And I'm going to also do a router.post where I have /edit, right, where I have an ID to edit, right? And I want to display the edit page, okay, display the edit page. Process the edit page. Yeah, I'll come back to the display part in a second. Process the edit page, okay? Here's my process edit page for the processing piece, right? I need that too, okay? And router.post, actually it's a router.get the edit, right? So that's going to be the /delete /ID. I'm going to delete by ID, right? So I've added, edited, and deleted. And then we need to process, oh, come on. Process the edit page, process the delete page, which is what I want, this purple one down here, which is also going to add in the stuff. But there's a problem to all this. If we only do processing, right? What about when I want to display my edit page? My edit page, for me I can display my ad page. Displaying the ad page is like, I need an endpoint for that. Or do I? Because basically the ad page is going to be just a blank page, right? But whenever I do a display edit page, that I need some work there because I'm actually going to go into the database and return some information. So actually that is a valid endpoint that I don't have right now. Okay, just to show you this. So these are definitely processing, but even when I display stuff, if I display the movie list, it's a router.get. I had to do that because without displaying the movie list, I couldn't get to the database and bring back information from the database. I have to do the same thing for the edit page. So back to the drawing board here. Go back to the movie list and edit it, right? The one I had. And I had a couple of other displays. Display the movie list, and here's the display ad page. I really don't need to do anything here. It's going to be a response redirect saying, or response JSON that says, success, you displayed the ad page. But display the edit page is actually some stuff. There's some actually code in there that I want to do. So let's grab those two pieces, the add and the edit. I'm going to do the display functions now for a second. Copy them, please. And let's go back to that controller again. So again, we did the processing, and I said that those are absolutely necessary. But so too then is the display. All right. So if I go back to movie list, it's not just about processing the edit and the add page, but also displaying the add and the edit page too. So let's put those in there too. So here they are. There's the functions that I copy from the movie list.ts file. However, there is no res render for the display ad page. Remember, it can't be like that anymore. It's literally a stub, right? Because it's not going to do anything. It's just going to, return success, right? So I'm just going to copy the res JSON here. And in my display ad page, I'm just going to respond with success, and it's going to say ad page displayed successfully. Ad page. And nothing else. There's not going to have any of this stuff. It's just going to basically say, yeah, we're good to go. You displayed my ad page, nice. But for my display edit page, this stuff is important. It's got to go to the database and find the ID, and this needs to change. So this is kind of going to be similar. Let's just paste that in there. Right, so response.json, instead of this, it's going to say edit page, displayed successfully. And I need my movie to edit, which is the movie that I'm going to send back. So movie is going to be the movie to edit, and I don't need my user information. And that's it. So that now completes my API for my display edit page and display ad page, but we don't have my routes for those. Let's add the routes back in. So we need the routes for those as well. And again, what we want to do is I'm trying to help you think about why I'm going back and forth. I'm doing it because although you may think that you don't need to do something, remember, it's just messaging that I want to send to the front end. And if I don't have an API, then I can't have any messaging. So this is my API endpoint that I'm doing right now. So I have my processing. Let's add in my displaying. So these are router.gets, and then it's going to be /add. So API add, if we ever get there, is going to be display the ad page, right? And router.get. Let's actually put that, these are all the displays, right? Router.get, I'm going to say /edit /ID, and then it's going to be display edit page. Display edit page, the purple one, I want to choose that, so it automatically adds it in. And that is my completed API endpoint for my router. Okay? So far, so good. And this is not including any authguard. Authguard means I need to be logged in, and I would add the authguard functions in here. But there's another way to do that, so I'm always protected for all of these pages, right? Remember, we talked about a couple of different methods of protection. And one thing that we can do is protect the entire route itself. Protect the entire route itself. So the way to do that, right, as an example on the front end, is to do that with using JWT instead of this little authguard function. So authguard, let's just get rid of that for now. Authguard is neat. It's neat. But what I want to do is protect the entire route, right? The entire piece here, this whole movie list. And I want to do that from the controller side, or sorry, from the configuration side. So I'm going to go to app.ts, again, back to this. And I'm going to scroll down to where it says the auth router and the movie list router, which is around line 108, 109. Okay. And in here, I certainly want to be able to get to my auth router anytime I want with no protection. But for my movie list router, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to say something like this. It's going to be passport.authenticate, right? That's what I want to do, passport.authenticate. And I want to pass in the strategy that I'm going to be using called JWT. That's the new strategy. And I'm going to pass in an option that's going to be session is false. So I'm not going to use sessions here for this one. And this little piece of middleware, this little one-line piece, is going to protect all of my routing, my endpoints, so that unless I'm logged in properly, I won't be able to get to any of them. It'll just say false every single time. Let's see what happens if I did that, okay? So this is the final version, and let's test it. So going back up to here, I don't need that anymore. Let's go to this. And if I went and refreshed, it should say unauthorized at this point. Okay, wait, what? How did I get that? Well, let's go back and talk about what I did. So passport authenticate, it's basically going to say, authenticate me with JWT. Do I have a token that I've passed in? If I haven't passed in a token, right? So I haven't done any of this stuff, then I want to stop you from accessing my route. Okay, cool. And we don't have any front end anymore. The front end is gone, right? So remember that when I want to do anything on the front end whatsoever, like remember we had all this this view engine stuff before where we want to have views and blah, blah, blah. I don't have this anymore. The only thing I have, if I go back out here, is I can go to my login page. If I go to API/login, it's going to go, I don't know what you're talking about. You're unauthorized to do my login. There is no login whatsoever, right? API login, it's going to go, bam, no, I don't know what you're talking about. There is no API login anymore. Well, why is that? Let's go back to this piece here. All right, first of all, and let's change some of these, the order of this stuff. Remember, because API, it's going to be the same thing. Let's put this auth router, instead of here, let's put it here instead. Because if we don't do that, save. And if I go back to this and refresh, you know, there is no login for this, right? And let me explain this. That means that the login information, I can't log in because there is no GET request, right? So going back to my auth route, there's only post requests. I don't have a GET request. And because I don't have a GET request, it's not going to allow me to do it anymore. There is nothing like that anymore, right? For to show my login page, my register page. What I could do is if you want to give feedback to the user, as an example, that they didn't log in properly, I could certainly have additional pages here to do that, okay? But for now, anytime we go to if I want to do a post, I have to do a post login and register page. So how do I test my API before I put it up? First of all, let's put this up on GitHub, and I'll talk about testing, and then we'll stop for the day, because obviously I couldn't get to React yet. So I'm going to do a git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say completed API or backend API. That's what we did so far. Oops, whatever, git push. And that does what we have to do, all right? Nice. How do I test it? Well, there's a utility that you can download called Postman. So please go ahead now. I want you to go up online, and I want you to download Postman. Okay, there's also an online utility. If I go to download Postman, there is a little utility you can download. It's probably the most popular utility out there to test your endpoints. Okay, that's what we're going to do now. We're going to test our endpoints out because we don't have a page. I don't have a front end anymore. My front end is gone. I'm going to simulate logging in and logging out this way. Okay, you can download this Windows 64-bit API. I've already done it, but here it is. Here's the download to test this. Please download this now. Okay, there it is. There's the link for it.
Excuse me, Professor, for the Mac is the same thing? It does have a Mac?
For the Mac. For the Mac. Is there Postman for the Mac? Command line runner for Postman. I don't know, actually. That's interesting. I think there is for the Mac, but let me see where that is. There might be another. Oh, here it is. Not your OS. Download for Mac. Here it is. Intel chip or Apple chip.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay. So how does this work? And so if I bring up Postman, here's my Postman. I'm bringing it up. Right now, when you bring it up, it's going to give you. It says upgrade. If you're like me, I haven't updated for a while. I'm just going to upgrade. And let's see if I can just download the new one. Oh, no, that's upgrade. No, I don't want to upgrade. That's what this means. Do not upgrade. It's upgrade trying to sell you something. What I meant, I was thinking this needs to be updated. No. All right, so what we want to do here is a couple of things, right? One more thing that we have to, sorry, we messed up one thing. Now that I'm looking at these endpoints, I realize what I messed up. On the back end, right, we can't use port 3000 anymore because port 3000 for testing is probably going to be used by the front end, remember? So on the back end, what we need to do is, I'm just going to go here to my server.ts, and I'm pretty sure we're going to do that. Yes. So, sorry, there's one last thing. So to finish this off, if you go down to server.ts, please, server.ts, while you're downloading Postman, where it says here, process.env.port or 3000, let's change this to 3500, please. Okay, 3500. And the reason for this is because if I go back to Node, let's just restart. So I'm just going to restart this. Localhost should run on 3500 now, not on 3000. So if I go back out to the site, not that one, this one. And if I go to localhost, I should try and run it on localhost 3500. If I go localhost 3500 /API/ movie list, it should give me an unauthorized like this. So 3500 is what we're running on right now. Okay, not 3000 anymore. Sorry about that. So let's just make sure we put that up on GitHub. So notice it says 404, a GET request is not found for movie list anymore. 401 is unauthorized. That's what it means. Okay, unauthorized. PowerShell. Let's put that up on GitHub. So git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say changed port to 3500. And this is really the testing port, because online they're going to give you whatever port that Heroku wants, or wherever you're setting this up. And then git push. Okay. So that is really the completed version of the backend. The backend is ready to go. But how do I test it? Like I said, let's go back to this. So what I want to do is I want to start thinking about my, I want to make a new, notice up here what it says. Here's the building blocks. Okay, so a new workspace, right? There's a new API documentation, advanced. There's a new HTTP request, a new collection, a new environment, right? And all this kind of stuff, right? So that's kind of what I can set up. Let's set up a new workspace and see what it does. So the workspace is going to be called COMP229. And you guys are section 2. That's going to be the new workspace. The visibility is going to be public, and I'm going to click Create Workspace. All right, there it is. So notice what I can do with workspaces. I can kind of align or set up whatever I want. And if I want to, I can also, kind of change workspaces up. If I go to workspace settings, as an example, you can make it so that it's only available to you. You can work with teams. This is an amazing tool to do a lot of other stuff. Okay. So that's something that I can do. This is what it is. And I can make requests and APIs and a bunch of other stuff here that I want to create. I can also rename it. So let's say if I made a mistake and I said, this is not right, it should be, in the summer 2022 semester, let's just do lowercase, section 2. I can totally do that and it'll change the workspace name. Excellent. So now that I have the workspace, I can do a plus and I can do different requests. Okay, let's think about the request that I want to do. I want to do a login request. I want to display, or I want to log in for the first time. So what type of request is it going to be? A GET request or a POST request? Question for you guys. And then we'll stop for the day when we do this testing. Okay. Nope. Remember, the GET request is going to be done on the front end. The POST request is going to be on the back end. So we're going to do a POST request type. Okay, cool. So what this gives us is a bunch of stuff. So there are parameters here, right, that we can look at. And there's headers, okay? There's authorization, and then there's body. Okay, so here's body. And notice that there is some options. None, form data, www form URL unencoded or URL encoded, raw, binary, and GraphQL. Let's choose this one. Okay, this one. And I want to do a bulk edit here. Okay. If I go back to value edit, it looks like this. So value edit, the key is remember we're going to send key value pairs. So remember the two key and value pair is username, right? And the value is going to be admin. And then the other thing we're going to send in is a password. And the value is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is the URL. That's the form data that we're simulating. We're simulating the data that the form is going to send to this. Now, what is the API request? What's the URL? This is where the URL goes here, okay? So we're going to say is the URL is going to be localhost 3500/API/login. Does that make sense? So this is the kind of the URL that we're kind of accessing. That's the API endpoint. This is the form data, and if I click send, then it should give me something, some kind of response or whatever. All right. So what are the response? So cookies, it says it's localhost session, HTTP only is true, right? What else did we get here from our response? Here's our parameters. Here's our authorization if we want stuff. Here's our headers and so on. And what happened? Did we get a good response back? You know, what did we get back here? Tests, and here's our settings. So what did this do? In other words, when I sent this response, so again, here's my body, right? And I got headers, and I got my body, and this is what I got back. If I click body, it comes back like this. Take a look. So success true, user logged in successfully. Guys, I just logged in. And this is my token. Take a look at this ugly token, man. Ooh, it's a massive token, right? Nice. Okay. This is the token that I got to use every single time if I want to see my my list. I got to pass this token back, right, to my authentication. Let's do the next one. Okay, so I want to make a new request. Let's do another one. Another tab here. I want to see my movie list. All right, let's add this to my new movie list. Okay. Again, I'm going to go to body. Okay. I'm going to go to form URL encoded, right? And I'm going to do a GET request. Okay. Is there any form to send in? The answer is no. I don't need to do that, but I do need to authorize myself. So this is where I want to go next. So get authorize. And what I want to do with the authorize, it says inherit from parent, no auth, API key. Hey, look at that. There's my bearer token. I want to do this piece, bearer token, right? It's the reason why it's asking for that, Saeed, is because the new standard is we should always ask the user if they want to accept cookies or not. Okay, that's kind of a new global thing we're in it. We haven't done that yet for our website, but you're supposed to ask the user, do they want to accept all cookies or not? And if they don't, then you won't save any cookie information. Cookies are there for you to use to identify the user. Okay, I want to click on bearer token. And notice that my bearer token is some token that we have here. Make sure it's filled in properly. So you want to, in this token space here, you want to go back to the previous request, and I want to grab this piece, make sure that the token, copy this token. And when I go back here inside of this part, I want this token to match the token I just got. Okay? Now, what is the URL request? We want to do a display. So it's going to be a GET request. And I want to go localhost 3500/API and then /movie-list. And if I did everything right, I'm passing in the token that tells the backend that I'm authenticated. If I click send, then I should get my list. There's my movie list. Take a look at that. That's the movie list I'm getting back. Okay? And I'm also getting back the user information. The user's logged in. That's me. Are you with me? Do you understand what I'm doing? It's okay if it's out of topic, say. You can always ask. So Josh is yes. Ricardo, you're good, right? So the reason why I'm showing you this thing is without this part working. So great thing is that Postman allows me to simulate what it's like on the front end. Without having a front end, I can simulate what it's like on the front end. I can send requests directly to the back end. And as long as I send in the proper authorization, and notice what it looks like on the back end. Remember, we can get responses from the back end. If I go to my NodeMon, take a look here. API login, it's 200. Everything is okay. API movie list, 200. Everything is okay. I was able to log in and all that kind of stuff. It's awesome, right? So I'm actually testing out my front end. My back end. Let's add a new movie. Let's see how that works. How do I add a new movie, right, to the list, right? And we'll just stop there. Okay, well, we're not going to do more. And so you understand how this works afterwards. All right, so we did a movie list. We've done this part. We've done a login, or after we've logged in, we've showed the movie list. This is the login piece right here. So log in. This is the movie list response. And now we want to add a new movie. So how does this work? And it looks like this. I want to do a post request because post request adds a movie, right? And I want to do localhost 3500/API/add. So I'm adding a brand new movie. I'm going to use my body this time again because I'm going to simulate a form that I'm going to enter in. And what are the requirements for my movie? Well, the key and value pairs are all the information I want to send in from my form. Okay? Let's think about this. If I look at the movie, I need to add in name, year, director, and rating. Let's do that. So name. And by the way, the name, year, director, and rating, these things here have to be in the right format for me to use. So one way to look at it, if you want to make sure it works, is you go back into the controller for movie list add. So display process add page. We need movie name, movie director, movie year, movie rating. Those are the names from the form that we set up. Okay, so again, I need over here, movie name, which let's add a new movie. We'll call it, Thor, Love and Thunder, right? That's the value. And then what's the next one? Movie director. I can't spell his name. Let's get that information to be accurate, right? So we'll go here into Thor, Love and Thunder. There it is. We'll get some information for what that is. It's out right now. Some people like it. Taika Waititi, he's awesome. I kind of like his direction style. He's kind of got a funny, direction style. We'll go here to this one. I'm not going to look at the plot, please. Spoilers, don't do that. But definitely this guy's name here is he's the director. Pretty cool, right? Oh, and this piece, and I want to put that in there. So here's the director, right? And what else? We need movie year. That's 2022, obviously. 2022. And we also need movie rating. Movie rating, I think what I put in there. And movie rating is here. And if we look here, just to be, I want to be, kind of impartial. It says that, it's got 7 out of 10, which is 3.5 out of 5. All right, so rating is 3.5 stars. So again, in here, we're going to say 3.5 stars. There we go. That's what I want to send in. Now, we can't do this piece unless we're authenticated. So I need also inside of the authorization bit to put in my bearer token, okay? And it has to match what we had before. So make sure that this matches what we had in my login. So if I go back to login, which is this piece, I have to make sure that I copy this back into the bearer token part for the request. Because otherwise, if I'm not logged in, then I cannot do any kind of add. Luckily, it remembered. Good. And then let's press send. And if everything goes well, then if I go to body, it's going to say true, successfully added movie, Thor, Love and Thunder, all this information to give me an ID, which is pretty cool. And if I go back to the second request I made, which is this one here, remember when we got these pieces, and if I click send again, it's actually going to give me the new movie right here. Okay, so there it is. So what we've done is we've tested the create function. We've tested create, we've tested read, we can test update the same way, and we can test delete all the same way. And guys, once we've done this, we're testing out the API documentation. Okay. Questions around Postman and how it can be used to help you with the backend. It can actually be used for you right now, even if you're not using an optional front end, right? Because we can use the same information when we're testing out our regular Express API or Express stuff. Any questions around this stuff? Okay. Right. So if there's no questions, this is where I want to stop for the day. I think we've gone over. I wanted to make sure that I got this part done for you, because without getting this done, then you can't do a front end. And again, what we'll do is we'll do a bunch of more sessions on, once we've got the back end working, how do you get the front end to communicate with it? How do I build a front end to communicate to the back end? Okay. Any questions before we go for the day? I wasn't able to do the React piece. No time. Okay. But I'm going to get to that. Okay, guys. So a couple things to note before we run away, right? And I'll stop recording. Remember what's due this Sunday. This Sunday, you have to get at least your first release done, which means all of the pieces to make your tournament work or your survey site or whatever has to work. Next time when we get together, right? Yes, I can modify that for you. 1 second. On next Monday when we get together, what I'm going to do with you is I want you to show me what you've got for your front end already, so I can give you some feedback. Okay? I don't expect you to have it today. You just did your contract. But next Monday when we get together, you've already submitted your first release. I want to give you feedback right away. That's the first thing I'm going to do with you guys. So please be prepared to show me that next week. Otherwise, let me fix up some of the people that have issues. I'm going to stop recording now. If the people who have any issues with their groups and stuff like that, if they can stick around, then I'll take care of that. Hey, Saeed, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
We're training a machine learning algorithm and just creating a machine learning app. How we're able to connect that with our website. Is there any session in this course for that, or just we will come later?
For machine learning?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not covering machine learning.
Like we are connecting the way database with the machine, like with the app or with the website. How we can do the machine learning? Hold
on. Let me stop recording this. That's something that's off topic, but for the rest of you guys, thank you very much. If there's no other questions, I'll come back and I'll answer Saeed now. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week. And I'll also have a separate session for the people on Wednesday. Thank you. All right.